The Swamp. You might expect the obvious advice to run poison resist mead. Well, I'm here to say you don't have to. If you follow my strategy, you shouldn't ever need it, and I will show you why. To demonstrate the effectiveness of this strategy, I am willing to stake my current no-death run on it. That's right, I am going into the swamp with 0 poison resist, and if I die, it's game over. What's up everybody, I am Rooster. Welcome back to the Ultimate Valheim No Death Survival Guide. Today we are chillin' in the swamp. No really, we are chillin'. Some players struggle with the swamp. When I was new to the game, the swamp was pretty rough. And to be fair, it does have its challenges, but honestly, the swamp is super chill once you learn its secrets. Let's take a second to appreciate the swamp for what it is. Arguably, the best biome in the entire game. Hear me out. Thematically, it's super well done. The mood, the lighting, the dreariness. In contrast to the first two biomes, at first, the swamp feels kind of miserable, but over time, you may come to appreciate it for what it is, or at least what it can be. Peaceful. It almost reminds me of that feeling when you're relaxing at the end of the day. You're sitting on a porch or near an open window, and it's lightly raining. It's mostly dark and quiet. You hear the raindrops falling gently, landing softly, peacefully. The swamp is the first biome where the terrain itself actually works against you. Even just entering the swamp will incur the wet status effect, reducing your health and stamina regen, and the terrain in the swamp is designed to entice you to drain your stamina. There's water everywhere, and obstacles and enemies lurking in the water that poison you. Basically, everything is set up to make you burn through your stamina just by interacting with the environment, and then the wet status effect makes you regen your stamina even slower. Obviously, you can't do much with no stamina, so you can easily get yourself in trouble. All we need to do to beat the swamps without dying is slow down a little. You see, in the swamps, slow is smooth, and smooth is fast. Or at least, slow is safe, and safe is smooth, and smooth is... well, you get the idea. Also, the swamp is just very well balanced in my opinion. It has some tougher terrain, tougher enemies, but it can also feel quite easy, depending on how you approach it. Obvious stuff first, before we head into any new biome, be rested, take full stacks of your best food available. At this point in the game, for no death survival, your best food setup includes carrot soup, deer stew, and minced meat sauce. Carry 10 wood for a workbench and enough materials to make a portal. Be sure to have a portal set up at base to connect it to, or you'll have to run back. Okay, we've all been there, right? Also, it's a good idea to have your swamp key so that you can duck into dungeons and retreat from battles if necessary. Yes, you should bring poison resist, but more importantly, bring 3 to 4 health potions, and once again, for no death survival, I recommend keeping health potions on the hotbar at all times. Be sure to bring enough arrows. I recommend 150 or more. More importantly, take your hoe with you. No, that one. Try to approach the swamp from land rather than sea. It's much safer to enter from the meadows or the Black Forest. From this point in the game and moving forward, when entering a new biome or approaching a tough situation, have your retreat planned in advance. Because if you do need to retreat, you can run to relative safety of a lower tier biome. As you get further away from the center of the map, you gain a greater chance of spawning in starred enemies, and you can also begin to encounter swamp tier enemies in certain villages found in the meadows. Don't underestimate these villages because they may contain the signature enemy of the swamp, the Draugr. The way to quickly tell the difference between a Draugr village and the normal Meadows village is to look for the presence of stake walls. If there are stake walls around the perimeter of the village, expect there to be Draugr and not boar. Also, most enemies in the Black Forest are of a different faction than most enemies in the swamp. Therefore, if you kite mobs together from the opposing faction, you get a battle royale. This is not only an incredibly useful tactic, but it's also just pure cinema to watch opposing mobs beat the snot out of each other. Unfortunately, for my current playthrough, this is the only footage that I've recorded up to this point of taking out a Draugr village. But let's pretend that this troll wasn't here. Try to approach carefully and take out any sentries that are guarding the perimeter. Once you clear the outskirts, you can start to work your way in, one house at a time. Range is your friend. Assess the area. There are often 2 or more Draugr inside each house, also with a possible spawner. Don't run into the houses recklessly. Sometimes I will build scaffolding or jump up onto the roof so I can thread arrows through gaps in the buildings and take out threats from the outside. Be alert for any enemies that break down the walls or doorways from the inside, as a host of enemies can rush you unexpectedly. Often you can lob arrows in at the Draugr spawners and take them out from range. And more importantly, it's often possible to take out Draugr spawners from outside of their activation range, which is a huge advantage. You see, of all the swamp tier enemies, the biggest threat to end your no-death run are Draugr. Specifically, the 2-star Draugr, and especially the 2-star Draugr archers. 2 stars hit really hard. Obviously, when you are within the activation range of a Draugr spawner, there is a chance that a 2-star can suddenly appear right next to you. It might be a bit risky to try to block or parry the attack, especially if you don't have an upgraded buckler. If you aren't prepared to deal with the attack by dodge rolling, you will absolutely take heavy damage. At worst, if you are already a little bit low on health, you can get one shot. And at best, if you have high health, the damage may be enough to stagger you. And if you get staggered, the same rules apply to you as when you stagger enemies. You become very vulnerable, and any additional damage that hits you while you are staggered will automatically crit. Last episode I discussed perfect storm scenarios, situations where you get really bad RNG and you end up possibly dying. Let's consider a scenario. You are bashing your way into a Draugr village house to take out a spawner. You dispatch 2 melees, a Draugr Elite and a 0-star melee. The spawner is left, and a 0-star Draugr archer is hitting you occasionally with arrows as you're fighting the other 2 off. You prepared well, ate good food, etc., but you're down to about 70 health from 95. As you get close to the pile and take a swing, a 2-star archer pops out right next to you. It immediately activates and prepares to fire. You try to run, block, parry, dodge roll, or whatever, but it doesn't work out, and you take one in the face from a 2-star at point blank range. You are now at 32 health and staggered. While staggered, the 0-star archer also hits you, and now you're at 14 health. As you become unstaggered, the 2-star is already redrawing their bow, and a melee Draugr Elite spawns in. At this point, the 2-star will kill you if it hits you again with any other attacks, and will probably drop you down to single-digit health if anything else hits you. You might think about drinking a health potion, but in this situation it probably won't heal you fast enough to allow you to tank another hit from the 2-star, especially because the animation of drinking the health potion will slow you down and can potentially block you from executing another action that could save your life. At this point, you need to hyper-focus on the attack animation of the 2-star and perfectly execute the next dodge roll just as the arrow is released, or it's game over. Let's say you can execute that next dodge roll perfectly. You manage to run around a bit, safely drink a health potion, and then either retreat or you stick around and take out the Draugr. Well, that's great if you can pull that off, but if you can't do that, you probably die to that 2-star and the other enemies in the area. And as I've said before, when you do die, it's important to consider the events that transpired prior to dying so that you can learn from it. And I also mentioned that combat mechanics can only take you so far, and you should only rely on them as a last resort. Well, in this scenario, the big mistake is entering the Draugr spawner's activation range. Draugr and skeletons share the same AI and play pattern, and therefore the same tactics that worked on skeletons can work on Draugr, but with one exception. With the Draugr, you need to focus when you encounter 2-stars, and more importantly, you always need to be aware of the possibility that a 2-star can pop out of a spawner at any moment, and anticipate it. Preferably, we want to take out Draugr spawners from range and only engage in melee range as a last resort. Now that we've discussed the Draugr, we may as well think about the rest of the swamp bestiary. We have the slightly tougher version of Draugr, aptly named Draugr Elite. These guys basically have the same play pattern as melee Draugr and can also spawn in from body piles, but there's only a melee variant of the Draugr Elite. No archers, fortunately. We have skeletons, which we discussed in the last episode. At this point, these guys are little more than a minor inconvenience. Next, there are a host of critters that want to poison us, with leeches in the water and blobs and oozers on land. Leeches do exactly what you might expect. They swim next to you when you're near or in the water. And of course, there's water everywhere because this is a swamp. They will do a little bit of physical damage and pretty significant poison damage over time. Don't get sloppy and let yourself get caught in deep water with a bunch of leeches nearby. Stick to the high ground. More on that later. Oozers and blobs are very similar. In fact, it could be said that the oozer is simply the joining of multiple blobs into the same creature, because when you defeat one, they will immediately spawn in 2 blobs. They follow the same play pattern. They kind of just glide over the terrain in your direction and will jump in the air ever so often. When they get close, they will spit out a poisonous ooze at you from close range. Note that after an oozer or blob jumps, you have enough time to hit them with 3 arrows before they jump again, which is important. Because earlier we mentioned how we don't need poison resist mead. You see, you don't need to worry about poison damage if you avoid getting poisoned altogether. In fact, you won't be taking hardly any damage at all. We have these human torch guys called Surtlings. Basically 0 threat, easy to kill from range. Just lob an arrow at them from far away. If you hit one, you will probably one-shot it, and then the others will probably kill themselves on the train because they take damage over time from water. They can only be found near spawners, easily identified by these giant static flamethrowers. The important thing is that they drop coal and Surtling cores. Everyone knows what to do here. Turn these things into saunas and come by every so often to pick up the free spoils. Next we have Wraiths that only spawn at night. I do recommend going out at night to hunt these guys for the loot drops, but not right away. Get yourself a foothold first, and rush a couple of things to bolster your stats. If you do encounter one early on, be careful and keep an eye out. These guys can be quite nasty, but aren't quite as dangerous if you see them first. Sooner or later though, if your character and the nearby terrain begins to glow with a faint blue hue, watch your back. These guys are like the swamp ninjas and can swoop down at you from awkward angles. They basically have the same AI as a floating Draugr. They kinda just come at you and attack once they get in range. Note that their attack animation is fairly quick though, and they do significant damage. Also, when you parry them, they are knocked back quite far, which can be annoying. Best way to mitigate that is to position your character relative to the Wraith and the terrain, such that when you execute a parry, the Wraith will kind of collide with the terrain, and then you don't have to chase them down in order to execute a counterattack. Finally, we have the Abomination. Safest way to take these guys on is to get up on top of a crypt or unbreakable log and shoot them with fire arrows. You can also try to cheese them with campfires. But if you have an upgraded bronze buckler, you can absolutely take them on in melee range. They have a ground pound attack, which is rather easy to predict and parry. Even though slash damage is preferred, any weapon will do as long as you land your parries. If you want to get spicy, try to drag one over to a Surtling spawner and parry it such that it gets staggered inside the flame AoE, and these guys will go down in no time. They have great loot drops, and the materials can be used to craft the root armor set, and we'll get into that a little bit later. Overall, every single enemy in the swamp drops stuff that we need, so we basically need to kill everything. As we move around, we also want to collect certain materials, including guck, which you can mine off of certain trees, and also get from abominations. And we want to grab any thistle that we find, and most importantly, keep an eye out for turnips. Some players claim that these are very difficult to find, and I do admit they're not easy, but they're not that hard either. They basically look like a sad version of carrots, just darker, slightly wilted, and with a faint splash of green tint. In fact, as soon as you do find turnip seeds, I recommend returning the base immediately to get these into the ground. The faster you improve your food, the faster you can increase your stats, and therefore your survivability. Obviously, keep an eye out for Sunken Crypts as you explore, and mark them on your map. We will want to raid these dungeons for materials that are vital to progression and crafting. Okay, let me finally reveal what we've all been waiting for. My strategy for the swamp. I call it the Hobo strategy, because you only need 2 pieces of equipment to deal with the vast majority of the swamp. Your hoe and your bow. As mentioned, we will be engaging most enemies from range, and yes, that includes leeches and blobs and oozers. Why give them a chance to poison you at all when you can just take them out without any risk whatsoever? With the exception, sometimes you can engage blobs and oozers in melee, but I highly recommend using arrows and softening them up first, so that when you get into melee range you can finish them off with a single hit. I also mentioned before to take it slow in the swamps. So here's how all of this fits together. The biggest problem in terms of survival in the swamp is the terrain itself. You see, all of the enemies can be dealt with accordingly, as long as you exert control over the parameters that are within your sphere of influence. This sounds complicated, so let's make it simple. The real problem is stamina. The terrain itself is designed to make you burn through your stamina, and the enemies are designed to gang up on you and take full advantage of you struggling to manage your stamina. Rather than playing the game on those terms, play the game on your own terms. Change the rules of the game and stack the deck in your favor. Why just accept that this is the swamp and that there's water everywhere, when instead you can completely nullify it? Use your hoe to create safe passage through the swamp. The goal is very simple. Prepare a cart-safe passageway throughout the swamp that connects all relevant points of interest. This may sound unnecessary, but I assure you it isn't. It may sound difficult, but again, it's not. The technique is simple. Some areas are fairly straightforward to make a path on. Try to keep the path between 0 and 1 meters above the water level. In most cases, you don't need to bring extra stone to raise the ground. When attempting to make a path in a water-filled area, look for weeds and areas where the ground isn't that far below the surface. Position your character on the highest possible terrain and use the flattened terrain feature of the hoe, which will attempt to slightly raise the ground to the height of your character's feet. Occasionally, you may need to chop down some trees and shrubs to clear a path, but overall, know that it's possible to make a cart-friendly path through the swamps, connecting all sunken crypts and points of interest without ever needing extra stone to raise the ground. That said, you may still want a little bit of extra stone because sometimes it's a bit more convenient to raise a little bit of terrain here and there compared to pathing around it. As we methodically move our way through the biome, we engage enemies from range. We take very little or zero damage, and we transform the terrain as we go. When we path to Sunken Crypts, I recommend getting on top and placing a workbench. This will provide a relatively safe place to retreat to later if things get too spicy. The real beauty of building a card path is that we always have a reliable place to do combat. And if and when the game unexpectedly throws some nasty stuff at your way all at once, you will want a clear pathway to retreat to relative safety. You see, making a cart path not only completely nullifies the danger from leeches, it also heavily reduces the temptation and the need to burn through your stamina just to move around, making it easier and safer to manage every single enemy encounter. In other words, by making a cart-friendly path, you aren't evening the playing field, you are tipping the scales in your favor and paving the way to success. And that is how you transform the swamps from a formidable biome into a super chill and peaceful one. That wraps up our episode. I hope you found this guide helpful, and I wish you the best of luck in your next swamp adventure. We've covered a lot of information so far, but I have loads more information to unpack to help you improve your Valheim experience, and I hope to see you all in the next one. Until then, stay chill.